It also suspends the operation of the Canadian Bill of Rights. The police have therefore been given certain extraordinary powers: the right to search and arrest without warrant, to detain suspected persons without the necessity of laying specific charges immediately, and to detain persons without bail. These are strong powers, and I find them as distasteful as I am sure you do.
They just haven't defined them.
They are necessary.
What assurance does this act give us that this thing is going to be rooted out?
Oh,
What assurance?
it's just the contrary.
All right.
It's playing right into the hands of
There's
everyone.
no way. There's no way.
We're not.
All right. So why not consider the fact that neither short-term remedy is likely to give us what we want, peace and order? So what about the effects of both actions in the long run?
There were people like you talking just like that in Germany in 1932 or 33, and what happened to them in 1940?
So erroneous and so
No, it isn't. It isn't. It started the same way. It started the same way.
I was afraid of riots in the streets. We've had this happen. Why do we act as if, oh, this could never happen here? It has happened here, and the little man is afraid, and now the little man is
anything else. It's rocked the French Canadians back and brought them out of their apathy. I can remember in 1963 when Leja was smashed by a bomb in Westmount and had his eye taken out and one arm off, and he's been a vegetable ever since. And just after that, O'Neill, the furnace man, was killed. And we waited to see what Lesage or Drapeau were going to do or say. We wondered, we hoped that somebody would go to the O'Neill funeral, somebody would take a stand. Nobody said anything.
Right.
Which was tacit, okay, it's fine. We're not interfering. It went on, and nobody said anything, and all the time it grew. At least the nitty-gritty has been brought home now to the average French Canadian. He's got to do or say something.
For the first time, astonished Canadians find their streets policed by the military. Students and radicals react.
Their answer to the FLQ kidnapping 2 people was to kidnap 250 people. Mm-hmm. It's impossible not to be aware of that, with no rights, right? Without even being able to communicate through your average radio station, right? 250 people are locked up for as long as the feds choose to keep them locked up. That's got to be obvious to everybody. It has. I mean, the population of Quebec has to be aware of the fact that the FLQ did something political, and the answer to it was something political, and that the FLQ is talking politics. And politics has to do with your daily life. It has to do with who's screwing you. The question is, who's screwing the man in the street?
Now everybody's really beginning to think, well, maybe the FLQ has some power. You know, they can really get these people afraid because the government is pretty scared to have done these drastic measures.
Is it only in Quebec that this kind of power takes place? Would they dare to pull off the same kind of thing in Ontario?
The government?
Yeah. I mean, are Quebec's people regarded as a bunch of, idiots who can be pushed around and treated like idiots, as the FLQ says? Are they so totally oppressed that you can just bring in the troops and nobody gives a damn one way or another? Would this happen in Ontario? Would it happen in British Columbia? I don't think so.
It's a matter of like deluding themselves that there, that there is a country called Canada. And separatism is now a very respectable idea. It's been around for the past few years. The PQ got 23% of the vote. They're going to get more next time. And I think probably in like 10 years or 5 years, like separatism will be voted in by the people in a very peaceful manner.
Did you figure that would happen? That if in 5 years, if the people voted in separatism into this province, do you think it could really happen? I mean, fuck, they're not going to let it. If this kind of nonsense, like of 2 guys being kidnapped and then figuring that they're going to protect us against the FLQ, who the fuck are they protecting anyway? If they have an election in 5 years and they decide, okay, the people have decided that they're going to have a separatist state, there's no way, absolutely no way that could happen. The troops would move in again.
But Bourassa has never once sort of taken a group and sort of who has never once planted bombs in a mailbox.
That if you do not draw a kind of spectacular attention to a situation, people will forget about it.
Why killing spectacular? That's really spectacular.
Killing people. Look,
that's what we're talking about. That's the name of the game.
you
talking about now?
Sweetheart, after the revolution, we're not going to kill you.
I don't care if you do, because I sure as hell won't be here.
Remember one thing, Terry, we're not going to lie down and play dead. We're not going to lie down and play dead.
Before the revolution?
You're going to have to kill us.
The FLQ did kill Pierre Laporte. In this communique on Saturday, October 17th, they announced that they had put his body in the trunk of this car.
Whether it's a cabinet minister, whether it's somebody totally unconnected with government, or whether it's just a man in the street, how important is that life?
It's not this at all. A government which wants to govern has no choice. They have to do what is necessary in order to continue orderly process of government. They cannot surrender.
Let me ask you this. Are there any of the demands that you think should have been given in to?
No, none whatsoever. Not a single one.
They decided that they were definitely not going to give up the 23 political prisoners, and they decided that they had to bring in the soldiers. But I give them credit for spending 4 or 5 days in negotiating, seeing what they could do. And we see that, in fact, the FLQ went down from 7 demands to 2 demands.
The mere fact, the negotiations were made at all was very wrong. You cannot negotiate with people whom you condemn because they're not your equals. If you consider these people criminals as they are, how can you negotiate with criminals?
Well, then aren't you really forcing them to pull the trigger if you talk like that?
Yes.
Well,
unfortunately, it's very cruel, but you haven't got choice. Eventually, they did pull this trigger. They did so.
No, but their life is so
I am not quite convinced
But I think
that if a very decisive action would have been taken by the government from the very outset, that this trigger would have been pulled. I'm not convinced.
What action could they
You can
take?
speculate both ways.
But the people never decided on this War Measures Act. To me, it was one man decided this thing and did it on his own.
Like, I agree with you, but we live in a democratic. You put Trudeau in government. He's your man. He can do whatever he wants for you. Because
Yeah, but he's supposed to be a servant. They just all of a sudden say, "Well, we're going to change that law."
But someone has to take a strong stand in a crisis like that. There's no way. You can't decide, all right, here's 20 million people. Let's decide what we're going to do. Everybody vote. You got to make a stand like that. See, I can't condone him for the stand he took. I just condone the way he took it.
But you mean the way he's using
Or the way he's using the power. Like Trudeau, apparently in the press beforehand, I think it was in the Star, some reporter asked him what the government's going to do. And he says the government can do anything, baby. That's the way it is.
Well, one man said that to me the other day.
So,
he felt the same way as you do, George, and then he got arrested himself for suspicion. Now he feels the same way. Now he feels the police state. And he don't like it now, until it hit him. Until it hits your home, then you'll know what a police state means.
I know, but
you'll walk around and see soldiers. They're not bothering you because you're minding your business. If you were to say something to that soldier, he can pick you up.
I'm a woman alone with 3 children, and I'm bloody well glad to see the troops there. I think the FLQ has just gone a little bit too far. They may have had grievances, but I don't think they had to resort to violence. I'm all for social change without violence. And when you think that your city is going to be bombed and people are going to be murdered and killed just because they happen to work in the government or they happen to live in the province and perhaps maybe don't have the opportunity to speak a language or whatever they decide is their beef against you, they can go out and shoot you or torture you or kill you. Well, I was bloody scared, and I was glad to see the troops come.
Where do you see the heaviest security? Is it in slum areas or anything?
No.
Right. Well, I mean, this is the point. The security is there, all right, but I don't think it's for us. Worrying about the poor. I think they're worrying about their nice homes and all that.
we might have some sort of socialist views, but we're a democratic society, which I think is the better one, in a sense.
Okay, but don't you think
With social programs.
Don't you think that this situation now is forcing people to go underground, more people to go underground? Then you won't see anybody what they're up to?
But how does a democracy protect itself from criminals, and murderers, and at the same time allow social change to go on? How does it do both jobs? And is one job, maybe one job can't go on when another job is at stake? And if that's the point, I mean, it's a sad situation. If we have to say, well, we can't have any more social justice now because the government's got to take care of a few outlaws.
Okay, Charlie, it's in your hands. How are you going to get Cross back? What deal are you going to make? How would you go about doing it? Could you find a better way of doing it?
Release
Pass
the
it back to you.
prisoners. I hold the government responsible.
Now, you would say release those prisoners
Right.
after they've refused to do so and one man's died over
Not
it?
in the beginning.
Now, you don't think
They
that
asked
would
for 'em.
stir up a lot of uneasy feelings that now suddenly the government's decided
Well,
to
everybody's
release
worried about
them?
these men's lives, and now you don't want to release these men. So to release that man, you would have
That's how
saved
you
his
would
life.
get cross back, eh?
To save that man's life,
Yeah, what did the families that
if
other
you're
man
putting me
got?
in that position,
Yes, I'm putting- I'm
well,
giving you
okay,
full
I'm
power.
telling,
You're the
telling,
Premier right now. You're the Prime
release the
Minister.
man to save the man's life. Release those men.
Can I help him a bit,
Yeah,
elaborate?
you're the Assistant Prime Minister.
Okay, I'm the assistant. But I'm saying now, this was brought up in, by somebody, I forget where I read it or heard it, but he says, you know, if you
Hope
go
we're
into
allowed
a
to have a
place
lot to
like,
say, Sheila.
if you go to a place
You know?
like Colombia or Brazil or something where they've got a few hundred, not a few 100,000, but say a gang of thousands of political discontents, political prisoners. Where in Canada, all we've got is 23 and a few odd ones here and there not related to this cause. So we got maybe 25 or 30 in Canada. Now, if we want to send them to Algeria, great, fine. Right now, all they're going to do is, when they're eligible for parole, they might get out in parole and start all over again, like Gagnon and Vallier. You know, supporting their cause on the outside, you know, open.
Like you mean they can get out and start all over if they were in Algeria
Yeah,
and
if we
come
send
back.
them, that's it. And we only got
That's brilliant.
25 of them. We only got 25.
You'd make a very good Prime Minister.
But
yeah,
the
that's
thing
brilliant.
is,
I wouldn't want to be in his shoes for any amount of money in the world. He could release those guys, those prisoners, and he has no guarantee that he's going to get crossed back alive. Plus, if he did release them, can you imagine what the average person in this country would think of him
I'd
for
have to agree
releasing
with
him?
you. I'd have to agree with you.
I mean, the government's not there just for, you know, a few people. They're there to keep unity within the whole country. And I think if he had released them, he would have stirred up a lot more trouble than what the FLQ is doing so far.
Do you think kidnappings of the two guys and the War Measures Act has no effect on us, the average citizen in the street, like directly on our lives?
It may have, okay, you're talking about the average citizen in the street. Now, you're not talking about a person who's trying through peaceful means to change the system and ask for social reform. If you're talking about the average Joe who's home and who's out working and, you know, is not really that involved in the political situation and reform, no, I don't think it's affecting them in the least. They're bloody nervous of FLQ and they're bloody glad to have the troops there to protect them.
Yeah,
That's
so-
the average opinion.
What's the
I'm
lesser
getting.
of two evils? The War Measures Act or the FLQ? Which would you rather have breathing down your neck?
The FLQ wouldn't breathe down my neck. They don't threaten me.
Yeah, but well, they won't. They don't threaten you immediately.
know.
But you can be walking by a bank or a mailbox. You're threatened all of a sudden when the bomb goes, eh?
Yeah.
But the War Measures Act, you know, it's left to your discretion whether you're arrested or not.
I've been in many demonstrations. For the last 5 years, I've been active in
Since the War
citizens
Measure
groups.
Act?
In the last 5 years, I've been
Well, don't
active
go on
in
a
citizens
demonstration
groups.
now.
Right?
What if we did go into the
So let me
welfare
finish. May I just
office?
finish? I have not had a phone call. I've never been asked a question by the police. When the War Measures Act came in, right away I thought, my God, this is it, Sheila. You're going to get interrogated. What are your sort of what are your politics? Nobody has asked me a question, and I've no way been told to quieten down. And we're done. We're still carrying on. We're still going to the City Hall. Our welfare recipients are still going advocating. We've in no way been hampered. Not one of us. And all our group are intact.
I always was pretty strong on opposing the government on the methods that they do. And I just feel that I can't do that now for fear of arrest.
I was